Hey, I'm Pascal from Orangepixel and welcome to another video. In 13, in 13 I created Heroes of Loot, one of my fastest selling games ever. And then I created a sequel, Heroes of Loot 2, which was not my fastest selling and not even my best selling game. Now I'm making a third part in the series. Am I crazy? Is it worth it? Is it stupid? What am I expecting from it? What are the numbers? Because I know you like numbers. Let's talk about those things after the intro. Before we start the rest of the video, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or the lack of the elephant and the fish. Regular viewers know this spot was for the iArcade, and of course the iArcade, the company, folded earlier this year, and that pretty much made the iArcade a waste of space, and pretty much. Yeah, I can't download new games onto it. I can't make games for it. It was pretty much just standing here looking pretty for the camera shots. But I was done with it, and I was annoyed with it because it was just such a bulky, dust collecting piece of technology. However, it was an arcade machine and I couldn't remove it completely, so I disassembled it. I found a book, so in theory I can reassemble it. It's somewhere in the corner over there. It's not completely gone yet, but yeah, I replaced it. I wanted more life in my studio, in my office, and also I've been looking at aquariums for a while now. We once had one back in 2008, a big one. Now I wanted a little small one. So this is like a nano aquarium with nano fish. There are 9 fish in there swimming around all happily, and there will be a few more. I think it can handle a few more. It's just fun to have, and it's a nice distraction and it's very relaxing. So the arcade is gone and the aquarium is gonna be the background for the next couple of videos for the foreseeable future. Right, let's dive into some numbers. So numbers, I actually have the numbers somewhere. Let me check on my phone. Heroes of Loot 1 was created back in 2013. It was, like I said, one of the fastest selling games I have ever made. And it was very much fortunate that that happened, because I was very much needing revenue coming in. So let's just quickly go to the numbers. I'll put them on screen somewhere, like maybe near the fish tank or something. iOS top seller, 71,000. Android version 42,000. With a side note, I'll get to that. Steam only 6,700. And then Switch version about 10,000. But of course half of that went to Serious Lion doing all the console ports, and I'm fairly sure it's close to 10,000, might be a little bit above or below. But Nintendo's reporting and backend for getting numbers from a single game, it's the most confusing and most difficult one from all backends I've encountered so far. But if my math is correct and I did the spreadsheet correctly, we're about 10,000, and yeah, so roughly. And then I have other platforms, and there's the side note for the Android version. Other platforms is mostly Android versions. Besides a few humble bundle versions for PC, maybe the itch.io sales, but that's maybe like 100 euros here and there over all these years. itch.io is great, but not for making money, or at least there are too many free games there, I guess. So other is a lot of different Android markets. The iArcade was an Android device, Ouya back in those days, and there have been many others. Amazon has an Android market, and then a couple of walled garden Android markets that you really you can't just get in there, but if you're in a walled garden, you can make good amount of money, and that's what I did. So overall almost 156,000 euros made on Heroes of Loot 1. Now revenue on its own doesn't really mean much. Heroes of Loot, to put it in context, was made in 9 months. I've talked about this a couple of times on the channel during a renovation of our house, so a lot of money was going out, and I was creating a game in the middle of people hammering, sawing, dust clouds everywhere. It was an interesting time. So when this game launched on iOS, it got a couple of features from Apple, and back in those days premium games getting features were really interesting. So we're talking like 10,000 a month, like a couple of thousand each day coming in, and then for like weeks on end. At some point, Heroes of Loot was actually topping the charts above Angry Birds. Of course, Angry Birds was there for like a year already and was still there a year after Heroes of Loot was gone. But at some point, we were making more money each day than Angry Birds was, which is crazy to think about that. And it's not made me a millionaire, as I just told you. It made me like 100,000-naire. Anyway, usually my costs for creating development is calculated pretty simple. 2,500 euros a month is what I need to survive and to live off. That's how we pay our mortgage. That's how we pay insurances and food and everything. Development costs were pretty much 9 months times 2,500. So yeah, the result of that was pretty good. And I'm very happy with that. And it's not a hit game, but for me personally, it was insane to see how well this game was selling at first. And most of that was on iOS and Android. Every time when I mention Heroes of Loot, people dive into the Steam numbers and tell me you're full of garbage, because there's no way with just a couple of reviews and just the numbers there that you're made that much money, or that your game is selling very well, or that you can make a living from it. If you're just looking at Steam, that's pretty much true. Heroes of Loot was created in 2013 for iOS and Android. I was not making PC games until 2015, and the first PC games I made were actually porting my iOS and Android games. So those games were designed very simplistic, not as deep and not as many options as PC gamers like to have. So it was a very mixed receival on PC. Many PC gamers don't like these type of games, too simple, just too simple, and I get that. But still, these games are pretty good, and everybody that once bought it on iOS, every now and then I get people mailing me that they now bought it on PC or on the Switch or wherever I'm releasing it next, because they remember it from back in the day, playing it on their first iPhone or their first Android device or whatever. So yeah, I'm still pushing it to new platforms, even though it's just an old game designed for mobile, not for PC or consoles. But it's still a game that's fun and entertaining. I think it was a mix of just the theme, who doesn't like running around dungeons. Also the simplicity of the controls for a mobile action game, arcade game. It wasn't a clearly defined mobile game. It was really an action game running on mobile. That's really what I eventually started doing with a couple of games before that. I wanted to create arcade games that were more fit for PC and console, but since mobile was my platform, I pretty much started designing arcade games for mobile, so simple controls, not as deep as PC or console games, but easy to play for everybody. Even my wife Aline played it a lot, and she doesn't like action arcade games, but this one she played a lot. So yeah, I think just the simplicity of it, and still the adventuring, and that it was pretty easy to get very far into the game. I think that just made it a success. And of course, a little bit of luck getting a feature from Apple here and there, although I think I mailed Apple for that, as there are email addresses for it. So yeah, all in all, it was a great success in a very short time, and I was very happy with that. And a couple of years later, I decided, let's try it again with a sequel, Heroes of Loot 2. So let's talk about those numbers, because those are a little bit different. So Heroes of Loot 2 numbers are the list: iOS 32,000, Android 12,000, Steam 6,500, Switch 5,000, and then other markets again 18,000. In total 74,000, so almost half or little under half of the original one. But development time for Heroes of Loot 2 was only 6 months. So it was a lot shorter, or 3 months shorter. So also the costs were lower. So yeah, it's a difference. I think it performed pretty well, to be honest. I think Heroes of Loot 2 is the better game. It was designed when I was creating PC games, or try to move into PC and console games. So it was more, it was deeper. It had a codex, it had statistics, it had options to change settings and all those things. A lot more PC-like game. But I also was still learning what PC gamers want and how to do those things. Heroes of Loot 2 yeah, I think it's still the better game of the two games, or I'm more proud of it because there's so much there with quests and adventure. It feels like bigger adventure, but it also lost a lot of the simplicity from the original game, and that might have been a turn off to many players that originally did get the first one. But then again, they probably didn't try the second one, so the second one also just got less attention, or people were not aware of it. Some people might still not be aware there's a sequel to Heroes of Loot. So that's mostly, I think, a marketing problem and reaching an audience, and not so much a game design or a quality issue. I think it's just more the fact that you haven't been able to reach as many people. I didn't get an Apple feature, or if I did, it was already in a time where Apple features were far less interesting revenue-wise. Yeah, those are the numbers. Let's see if we can find a conclusion or come to some sort of conclusion on this. But also, I'm working on the third part, or a new game in the series, Gauntlet of Power. Am I being stupid, or what am I expecting from it? Let's wrap it up. So the third part in the series is in development, Gauntlet of Power. That's the main title, and I added Heroes of Loot like a little tiny up there because I'm not sure why. I think because Gauntlet of Power sounds much better than Heroes of Loot 3. Because I don't know, maybe the fear that if people see the 3 they are missing out on 1 and 2 and they are not even gonna try the new number or new version. So I figured it was more interesting to just make sure this is part of the Heroes of Loot myth, story, adventure, but it's a new game. You can just dive into this. What am I expecting from it is pretty good things actually. Right now the demo is doing pretty well, and a lot of wish lists are already just coming because of that demo, and it hasn't been in Steam Next Fest and all that stuff yet. So that's good. The feedback from players is more than I usually get on demos or early builds. So that's good. I'm not saying the feedback is good. I'm just saying there is more feedback on it, but in a good way. So I know it's a feeling. I know it's right. I think what's working in this game is that it's also very simple to understand. If you see somebody play the game, it's pretty obvious what's going on, and it's very simple to understand. So I'm trying to stick with that and not making it too complicated. But on the other hand, I also want to add little extras here and there like I did in Heroes of Loot 2. So I'm now trying to tiptoe around keeping the game simple. Sorry, I'm tearing up here, not about this topic, but just because I'm getting a little cold. I think it's cold outside and it's warm inside, and then the sniffles. Anyway, where was I? Yes, I'm trying to tiptoe around the fact that I want to keep it very simple for people to just see it and recognize what it is and think, I can play that, I can enjoy myself in that world, let's get it. But on the other hand, also want to add little extra details here and there and a little deepness, because I know that what PC gamers like, and they spend hours behind their PC playing a game, so they need a little bit of extra content, and it will be there. But on the surface, it's gonna be this simple game that everybody can enjoy and dive into, and hopefully that will pay out in results, and with that I mean revenue, because I need to make money to keep making games. That's simple math, and that's pretty much all it is. Right now, development wise, I think I'm at like 4, maybe 5 months of work. It's hard to pinpoint it on this game because I've been doing it in between Regulator City work and just here and there on a Sunday afternoon, just relaxing but tinkering with the game. So it's very hard to pinpoint how much time I've put into it exactly, but a rough guesstimate is 5 months, maybe nearing the 6 months now. But also a lot of the stuff I wanted to add to the game is in the game, and I'm currently, yesterday I was working on the game, but I couldn't really come up with stuff I wanted to add. So what that means is I have to just sit down and play the game now and see what comes up as ideas. If not a lot comes up, then it's just gonna be creating extra end bosses and maybe some creatures here and there, and then get it ready for a release somewhere next year. And meanwhile, I will probably start working on another game, which is gonna be another sequel in another series that's been doing very well, Space Grunts, the third installment of that series. Because I think sequels have been worth it. If you can create the sequel in a short amount of time, and that's pretty much the point of doing a sequel, having all that stuff, having all that, having an audience, having a market, having a genre and all that stuff, and build on top of that and onto that and explore what other options you have, I think sequels are worth it. But do let me know in the comments what you think after hearing these numbers, and maybe your own experience with doing sequels. Drop them in the comments or come on the Discord and talk about it in more detail. And of course, if you have questions, drop them somewhere as well. And if I read them, I'll try to answer them. For now, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Bye.